My name is Angus Henderson, and today is February 22nd, right? 2019. I'm talking to Mr. Mike Millard, who attended OSU Stillwater in when the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
Yeah. And this interview is part of the OSU Diverse Sexuality and Gender Oral History Project, specifically focused on the LGBT history of OSU. So let's start from the beginning. Where are you from?
Originally from Tulsa.
Oh, me
So,
too.
yeah, I was born 1970 and lived there up until I turned 18 and went off to college. First year that I was in college, I went to a private school in Arkansas.
Oh.
And then that was a little bit too restrictive for me, so I transferred here in the fall of '89. So,
Where'd you go to high school?
Green Country Christian Academy.
Oh
in
my
Tulsa.
God.
Yes.
I went to Sepulpa. I feel you a little bit, but not that much.
Yeah.
What was high school like for you?
Very repressed.
Oh no.
There were a total of about 120 students from kindergarten through 12th grade at my school.
Oh.
And my graduating class, there were 11 of us that graduated, 12 in the class.
Oh, short
Yes.
ceremony.
Oh, no. We had a 3-hour ceremony for our graduation. Yes, for 11 people.
How did they even manage?
Oh, let's see. You'd have a speaker, then you'd have a prayer, then you'd have the preacher come. One of the pastors or preachers would come on and say a little something, and then another speaker, and finally, it was time for us to walk across the stage. And but yes,
That's wild.
yeah, oh yeah. But there was a military academy in Tulsa that year, and they had one graduate. And from what the newspaper was reporting, that ceremony took 4.5 hours
Well, they
for
were
one person.
They must have been just proud of that
Yeah.
one fella.
I don't know. I was like, that would have been, 4.5 hours for one person to sit there.
What would they have done if he hadn't shown up?
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I was just, because the newspaper was reporting on all the lengths of graduation ceremonies and stuff, and I read that and I was like, good Lord.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Such a baby school. It's so small.
Yeah.
Did you already have an inkling that maybe you liked boys a little bit?
I wasn't in when I was at school and all, but because of the fact that it was a church-sponsored school, it wasn't one of those things that I talked about a lot. There was some bullying, but not a whole lot because most of them knew that I was really good friends with the softball team. And the girls would, if they found out somebody was bullying you, they'd come out, with baseball bats and chase you. So it was like, okay, that only happened once or twice. And after that, I was kind of left alone.
Oh,
So yeah.
I would watch that movie. That's wonderful.
It was something, but it was that's just how it was.
That's so sweet. Are you still in touch with any of them?
With some of them, not as many of them as there were, but not everyone's on Facebook and so forth. So
That's so cool. I'm so glad they were there.
yeah, they got me through a lot. So.
That's awesome. But you did make it through.
Oh yeah.
Even the 3-hour ceremony.
Yeah.
But then you went to a private Christian college?
Yeah.
Why?
They gave me a full ride.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good reason.
$15,000 a year scholarship that pays for everything. So it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Money's a strong motivator.
Oh, yep. But like I say, they got you there, and then it's like you found out about all of these extra rules that weren't talked about and so forth.
Really?
Yeah, like your hairstyle, they could dictate what you could and couldn't wear. Let's see.
Is there no beard rule there? I hear there's a school like that.
No, you could wear a beard as long as it was trimmed and so forth. and all, but your hair can touch your collar. Girls, either their hair had to be in a ponytail or had to be straight down, no fancy hairdos. And also, and girls could only have one earring in each ear. Guys couldn't have any.
Oh.
And also, and let's see, girls could only walk to a certain point on campus. When they reached the chain link fences, they couldn't go past the chain link fences because that was the boys' dorms and all. And the guys could only go into the lobby of the girls' dorms and all. And so, different things like that.
That's wild.
Oh, yeah. And we could only be in the girls' lobbies from noon until 10 p.m.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so it was like just a little restrictive and so forth. So, and then they really didn't have what I wanted to major in. So I was like, this just isn't for me. So after a year, I came over the summer and visited several different schools here in Oklahoma, and it was like, okay, OSU has that home feeling. And for 10 years, I called it home.
I don't blame you. The school does kind of have a home feeling.
Oh,
it does for me too. So I feel you. I think I understand a little bit. It's a cool place. Where else did you tour? Tell me what schools were better.
Well, I went down to OU. Went to UCO. Even toured TU, and all. But I was like, okay, I kind of enjoyed being 8 hours away from the family, and also I was like, okay, I don't know if I could really move back home and live with the family and so forth. So I was like, we'll pick someplace that's a little bit away. And like I say, OSU just had that home feel, and they gave me one of the best scholarship deals that I was offered. So
it sounds like you were a good student.
I tried to be. Now, the first semester I was here, I was just a little overwhelmed.
Oh.
And all, because, going from a high school where there were 12 people in your class, and then going to a private college where there were 3,000 students, and then all of a sudden, coming here to a place where there were roughly like 23,000 the year that I started here. So it was just a little, okay, there's more people in this class than, I had in the whole department at the first university. So I was like, okay.
Oh.
So it took me a little while to get used to it and to actually also learn how to study.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had that problem too.
Yeah. So, but once I got that figured out, I started excelling. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I would ask if you enjoyed your newfound freedom when you first went off to college, but it doesn't sound like you got it until you got here.
No, here was really when I really started spreading my wings and figuring out exactly who I was and what I wanted to do. And even though it took me 10 years to really figure out what I wanted to do in life, but still.
Well, these things take time.
Yeah.
How did you start going about doing that? You didn't just go to class and go back to your dorm.
No, I came up here a few days early to just be part of what was called Alpha, which was the freshman orientation program. Oh. And so, I did a few things there, but a few of the things were more for, this is your first time in college, and, you need to learn how to do a few things. Like they offered sessions on how to do laundry and things like that. I'm like, okay, I know how to do that, so I don't need that. So I just, went out on my own and kind of wandered around campus, and I ended up, there was a little hole-in-the-wall bookstore over on the corner of Knobloch, right across the street from the fire department. Oh. And I just wandered in there because I'm a big reader. And I just started wandering around there, and I came across this series of books that I'd heard about. And I was like, okay, I finally found them. I'm going to buy them and so forth. And so I bought them, and they were Armistead Maupin's The Tales of the
Tales of the City.
Yes.
I love those
And
books.
yes, so I bought they had the first 3 books in the series. So I bought those, and I, quickly found my way back over to Bennett, which was where I was living at. And, I had a couple more free hours, so I started reading the first book. And, well, that's all I did for the rest of the weekend was I read that first book, and I was like, oh my God, this is so me. And I was like, okay, if Michael in the book and Marianne can do everything, I can finally start being me. And so, after that, I was like, I'd heard that OSU had a GLB group.
Mhm.
And so, I was just waiting to hear about when that they were going to have a meeting or so forth. And so, first month of school went by, I didn't hear anything. I was like, well, I don't know how to find out about this or anything. So finally, like the middle of September, just in the little society ads in the back of the Oak Collie, there was a little notice saying, the Gay Student Organization is having our welcome back to school meeting in, I don't know what it's called now, but back then it was called the Home Ec Building, and over on Monroe, kind of right near Scott Parker Wentz and that area.
I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, it's not it wasn't the Ag Building, but it was the building kind of right next to it,
Mhm.
and right next to the Communications Building as well. And
I
so
think the Ag College has taken it over. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's go on.
But yeah, so anyway, the first meeting was up on the 3rd floor, which was, that was where the fashion program was, and so I go up there and I'm petrified
Oh.
to for the first thing. And also, I found the room, and I probably paced back and forth around that floor about 4 or 5 times before I got up the nerve to go in. And because I passed a couple of frat boys, and they were like, yeah, that's where the gays are meeting. Let's, they were talking about, we ought to go in there and say some things and all. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to go in there. I'm not going to get involved with that. And so, like I said, I just kind of paced around a couple of times, and finally a couple of other gay guys came in, and they're like, are you here for the meeting? And I was like, yeah. I was like, but there were a couple of people talking bad about it and so forth, so I didn't want to go in. And they're like, well, just follow us. We'll, we're all going to go in and so forth. So they just kind of took me in, and that was my first time being out and open. And, ever since then, you can't put me back in the closet.
There's much more room out here.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Do you remember that first meeting?
Yeah, it was in one of the larger rooms, and there was probably 30 or 40 people. There were a couple of faculty members
Wow.
here that were there. Joe Rackley.
I interviewed him.
Yeah, he was with the zoology department.
Yeah.
I can't think of her name. Jill Rohrabacher, she was there. And a few other people, and I kind of got to meet them. And then this one woman, she just kind of sat down next to me. She was like, you look a little scared. She's like, if you get nervous, just touch me or something. And she's like, I'll walk out with you, and we can talk or something. And so, yeah. And that was my first introduction to Hildy. And she's still one of my best friends now.
Oh, wonder! I'm trying to get a hold of her. I've got her phone number.
Yeah.
She hasn't answered.
I know she's been helping out with her family a lot. So her mom's been a little under the weather and trying to get her back up on her feet. So that might be part of it.
Okay. I'll keep trying. I've got some time.
Yeah. And
She
if
sounds
worse
so
comes
cool.
worse, messengers through Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So
At least she's got an easily Googleable name.
yeah,
Thank God.
yeah.
I always come across all the beef cattle stuff. So, so you did that first meeting, and it sounds like you made a bunch of friends just right
Oh
off.
yeah. It was just kind of one of those. A lot of people just kind of were like, "Hey, you're new here and so forth, and I'm so and so, and this is my major and so forth." And they just thought we're like, "Oh, you're a psychology major. Trying to figure yourself out, are you?" Well, a little, I guess.
Maybe.
It was like, the first college I went to, they didn't have psychology. They had the closest thing to it was human resources. And I was like, I didn't want to do that. And so I was like, psychology is more interesting. So I was like, I just want to find out about all the weird mental illnesses and things like that. And so, so that's why I became a psych major. So
I love all the weird stuff people do.
yeah.
I feel you. My fiance is a clinical therapist. He just graduated too, so
Yeah.
I'm very proud of him. So that's my sidebar. But do you remember the day after that first meeting? What was that like? How did you feel when you woke up?
It was kind of I really don't know how to express that. It was just kind of like a weight had been lifted, and I was still me, but it was just, there was more freedom. I didn't have to pretend to be somebody I wasn't, because it was just just a lot more weight off of my shoulder and all. And I just did what I wanted to do. The heck with what my roommates or anybody thought and so forth. So yeah.
Oh yeah, you were in Bennett, right?
Yeah. Third floor, 354. I don't remember if there was. I think it was East Bennett because I was in the apartment side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the funniest thing, the halls in our wing were painted like this pastel purple and pink.
Oh.
And so the first day that when I was moving in, there were people, oh yeah, that's the gay floor and so forth. And I think I was, as far as I can tell, I was the only gay one on the floor.
Oh, but it was meant to be.
Yeah, and so and then the funniest thing was my last year here, I decided I wanted to move back to Bennett. And so I couldn't get back up on the third floor, but I ended up in 054 East Bennett. And so, so I was like, okay, that works out pretty well for me because I was like, starting point and ending in the same fashion and so forth. So, yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. What was it like having just a heterosexual roommate?
My roommate was pretty cool about everything. He was an older student. He was in his late 20s, I think, and he was coming back to get. I want to say it was something over in the ag department, like animal husbandry or something like that, because he was working on a ranch and he was in charge of all of the livestock and so forth. So. But he was really nice and really cool about everything. I never will forget it. My first semester here, one day I was just feeling horribly sick, and I threw up and I passed out in our bathroom.
Oh no!
And I just woke up moaning and groaning, and I couldn't walk or anything. He just came in, picked me up like I was a sack of potatoes, carried me out to his truck, and brought me over to the student health center.
Oh,
we called it Voodoo Village, and all. But for a college student that had no health insurance or anything, you could go in there for free. All you had to do was pay for any medications that they gave you. And also, and they found out that I had kidney stones.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so yeah, and they kept me there for a week, and I didn't ever get to pass them there. So they ended up Friday night. We had a snowstorm hit, and
no.
they loaded me up into a cab and took me to the Stillwater hospital where I had emergency surgery on a Friday night. Yeah, and I never forget it too because they were wheeling me into surgery, and they'd already given me some of my pain medicine and the stuff to knock me out, and I just told them I can't have surgery until Dallas is over. Because Dallas was still big back then, and I was like, I gotta watch Dallas. It's the cliffhanger, so I gotta watch it. They're like, you gotta have surgery. I was like, you're gonna miss Dallas. And I just remember I grabbed a hold of the edge of the thing. I was like, you can't do it. I won't go. But they, next thing I know, I'm waking up. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and the nurse is going, it's time for your pain meds. And I was like, I missed Dallas, and I was mad the rest of the night.
Did you ever find out what happened?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I eventually did, and it wasn't the huge cliffhanger that they were making it out to be, but so yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I've been in that little emergency room too, but we won't go there now. So, it sounds like you made lots of friends at that first meeting.
Yeah.
Did they have meetings a lot?
They had a meeting back then, the first year that I was here, about once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And it was usually either the second or third Tuesday of the month. And also that you could kind of keep track and so forth. And that first year, they were always over there in that one building up on the third floor. And a lot of us afterwards, we'd kind of get together and go either to the Stonewall Inn or Hideaway.
Oh.
Those were our two big places to go the first couple of years. But usually if I was tagging along, they decided we'd go to Hideaway since I was still underage and couldn't get in. And also I was like, well, that's good. I can have pizza, and y'all can still have a beer or something over there. So
that's considerate.
Because there was, like I said, a little core group of us that did a lot of things together. They knew I didn't have a car, and so if they were going to someplace, they'd always call and say, hey, on this day I'm going to go to Walmart, or we're going to the city. You want to tag along and so forth. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I think you told me it was called GLO. Is that what it was?
The first year it was called the Gay Student Organization, and then the next year, then they renamed it the Gay Lesbian Student Organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 2 more years down the road, then they renamed it the GLBCA, Gay Lesbian Bisexual Community Association, because we were getting more people from just the community coming in and joining in on the meetings and wanting to be a part of things. So
how cool.
Yeah. And at that time, we'd moved over to the 4th floor of the student union for our meetings. We usually held them the same room that the student government was holding their meetings in on. Usually, like I said, I think meetings were usually on Tuesday nights, and also that we didn't conflict with some of the other groups. So.
How many people would go?
When we became the GLBCA, we probably had a core membership of about 60 or 70 people.
Wow.
Yeah, we were pretty big back during that time, which would have been around 92, 93 was when it really blossomed.
It sounds like it. When was that? The Gay and Lesbian March on Washington for Rights? Was that 1992?
That was, I want to say that was 92 or, it might have been 93, but because I remember we went to 3 carloads of us went to D.C. when they did the final showing of the Names Project.
Wow.
I think that was 92, might have been 93. I just remember it was held around October 10th and through the 12th or something, because I remember they wanted to do it in part in connection with National Coming Out Day
Oh.
and so forth. But
Will you tell me about the Names Project? I haven't heard
yeah,
of it.
back in the 80s when the AIDS crisis was really starting to hit the gay community here in the United States, Cleve Jones in San Francisco was losing a lot of his friends and community members to AIDS, and so he wanted a way to remember everyone. And so he started sewing panels with their names and other things about the people on there. And over a couple of years, other people started sending him panels that they had made. I think, if memory serves me right, panels were like 3 feet wide by about 5 or 6 feet long.
I think
So they were pretty
we had
good.
one there in the Equality Center. So yeah, they're pretty big.
Yeah, and so in the early 90s, it was becoming massive. We took up the entire lawn there around the Washington Monument, and they predicted that that was probably going to be the last time they'd ever be able to show it in its entirety.
And OSU was there.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And shortly thereafter, James was able to talk to somebody within the organization and managed to get some panels brought to OSU. And we hung them up from the rafters in the mezzanine of Kerr Drummond and Wilhelm.
Wow.
And for everyone to see.
Who's James?
James was, I don't know if we were really boyfriends, but we kind of played around at it. But he was, he came to OSU in '92, and a little while after that, he came out as basically the first cowboy living with HIV.
Oh.
And so, he was really big on AIDS activism and getting support for individuals living with HIV. And also, but he managed to, like I say, talk to somebody within the Names Project and get some of the panels brought here. And we also, one day, we had a 12 by 12 signature panel that we created. And we were the first university in the United States to ever have a Names Project panel that we donated. And so it was just bunches of people. We had it set up someplace in the student union. Mm-hmm. And people could just come in and sign it with, their names of loved ones that had passed away or comments that, they wanted to make and so forth. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about it is so sad, but it's also we really came together, it sounds like.
Yeah, the whole university, when James announced that he had HIV, the whole university really came together and worked with him to develop some guidelines and some resources and so forth. So
that's so cool. Surely that wasn't the first time you heard about HIV.
No, it wasn't. But that was just really the first time that it hit me, mm-hmm. And because I never will forget when James told me. It was December the 3rd, 1993, mm-hmm. when he was starting to tell people. And I never will forget that because we were coming from one of the GLBCA meetings, and there was this little hole-in-the-wall chicken restaurant on 6th Street. And I think it's now been demolished and turned into a liquor store or something. But anyway, I never will forget it because we'd stop there to eat dinner. And then when we were leaving, as he's taking me back to I was living in Kerr Drummond at that time.
Mm-hmm.
When he was driving me back over to Kerr Drummond, he just dropped this on me. That's the only really easy way to say it. I remember he was smoking a cigarette, and I just remember he's like, I have AIDS, and I just remember looking over him. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, I have AIDS. He's like, not just HIV. He's like, I have full blown AIDS, and I just remember sitting there watching the cigarette smoke, twirl up and out the window. And I was just, okay. And I just remember, I don't think I said much to him. I just remember he pulled up in front of the dorm, and I told him thank you and got out, shut the door. And, I think it was another day or so before I called him, and we talked and so forth. But it was just kind of, okay. I was like, it's really hitting. I was like, you just hear about it on the TV, and every so often, there's an article about AIDS or HIV in the newspaper, but I don't know anybody. Now boom, I do. And then after that, I met some more of James's friends, and oh yeah, by the way, I have HIV too, and so forth. So even though I wasn't HIV positive or anything, I became kind of a sub part of their community. So
where was his community? Were they all students too? It doesn't sound like it.
Most of the people that he knew, it was just from some of his time before he came to the university, because he was in his 30s when he came to OSU.
Oh.
He was like 31 or 32.
Oh, a foxy older man.
Yeah, and all, but so it was just kind of, he'd been involved with some groups through Oklahoma City, and he knew a lot of the not the club circuit or anything like that, but just through going to some of the clubs and so forth, and I guess through talking and mutual friends and so forth, you just found other people with HIV and so forth. So.
Wow. I wonder if there was more of a community in Tulsa and Oklahoma City.
At that point in time, there really was.
Yeah.
I know there were about 2 or 3 other people with HIV here at OSU, but they weren't very open or vocal about it.
Mm-hmm.
The newspaper interviewed James and a couple of them, but James was the only one that would allow him to use his name. The other ones, it was just identity, anonymous identity, or doesn't wish their identity to be known, that sort of thing.
It seems scary.
Yeah, because, James was a very open individual about being gay. And he didn't have any qualms about people, calling him names or anything like that. But I think some of the other individuals, they were still more in the closet about their HIV status and didn't want it to be revealed because of, dating circumstances, relationships, things like that.
Man,
So
James sounds so cool.
he was, so, yeah.
Man. So, let's see. You had the big club here, but it wasn't big when you first got into it.
Right. No, it was kind of small those first 2 years or so.
Yeah.
And then we just had a huge wave of freshmen come on campus.
Wow.
And with all of the new freshmen, we just had more and more people coming to meetings, and the younger group was more activist based than what some of the older members were and so forth. So, we started doing, campus protests and things like that. I remember the year that the first President Bush was invited to come and be the speaker at graduation. I remember we held a protest on that evening.
Wow.
And because back then he had never really talked about AIDS or HIV and anything like that. So we were just part of another group or two that came and protested his stance on that.
Other people protested too?
Yeah, there was a group that came down from came up from Oklahoma City, and I think there were some individuals from Tulsa that came in as well.
Wow.
So yeah, there was probably, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 of us total, because there was with it being President Bush, there was a lot of security and a lot of news coverage. So I think, some people were a little put off by that or a little nervous about it. So, yeah, because I remember we were allowed in the parking lot there by Gallagher Iba, right there on Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a fence with Secret Service guys and OSU security that were patrolling the area leading right into the football stadium and so forth. And you had to show your ID, and I think they also issued tickets for the graduation, and I think you had to have a ticket if memory serves me right.
Oh.
So yeah, but we were kept far enough away so that Bush wouldn't see us, I guess.
So you can't get your gay spit on him.
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Where else did you protest?
We did a protest asking them to, it had something to do with being more inclusive. I don't really remember all the things, but we did it right out in front of Whitehurst by the president's office.
Was that the kiss in?
Huh?
Was that the kiss in?
No.
Oh.
No. We just were out there. I just remember it was an extremely windy day.
Oh, no.
And because we'd created this new banner, and we had the banner out there, and I just remember we were trying to keep it upright, and every time we got it settled, the wind would kick back up and it'd go flying and so forth. So I think we spent most of the day just focused on getting that banner than anything else.
The dangers of a prairie protest, right?
Yeah. But no, we did, let's see, we did a kiss in the student union one time. And I didn't take part of that because at that time I was single, and I was just like, I didn't know as many of the people then as previous years, so I was like, I'm just kind of a little uncomfortable and all that. I'm a little bit of a prude, so
I didn't want to go and find somebody to kiss there.
So I just kind of let them do their thing, and I just went on about mine. So
sometimes that's how it is.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, you already told me about the influence of people in 1990. It's good to hear you went to the Stonewall, because that's where we still go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there was one year, I remember some community member opened up a bar on I'm guessing that's the south side of town.
Uh-huh.
It was kind of just this little hole in the wall dump. But, they opened up this bar, and 2 nights a week, they called them gay nights. And, we'd go there, but, it was just never, it was just never really a big scene and all. And, they didn't last long.
Oh.
But.
Do you remember their name?
I sure don't. I just, like I said, I just remember it was just this little hole in the wall place in kind of a seedy area.
Oh.
And so I think that was probably the reason why it didn't last too long, was just because, nobody was really comfortable leaving their cars out there and so forth. So,
Oh, how spooky.
yeah, but
But you did go to the Stonewall
yeah.
and the Hideaway.
Uh-huh.
Where else did you go off campus?
Those were the two big places that we would go. And then, at least once a month, we'd end up going down to the city, to the rec room for the people that were underage. And the Havana Inn has several clubs there. And we'd usually end up at the Havana Inn because that way we could get a room for the night and, just party until they shut the club down. So, yeah.
Well, that still happens too.
Yeah.
And so does the rec room. It's still going.
Yeah, but I heard they're getting ready to close that one down.
Well, they've closed and then opened back up
Okay.
several times. So
Yeah.
hopefully that's what's happening now.
Okay, yeah. But, yeah, so, that's kind of what we did was we'd go to the city more often than we'd go to Tulsa.
Yeah.
Because I think more of the people were more familiar with the OKC GLB community than they were with the Tulsa one. Because I just remember we went one time to Tulsa and we kind of did a little bit of bar hopping, but the bars were like you'd have to get in your car and drive 10, 15 minutes to get to the other club. And, there in the city, it's just, okay, you can park at the Havana and just walk to everything. So,
Yeah, I've noticed that too. It's a real pain.
yeah.
Especially when you want to actually have a drink at the bars you go to.
Yeah.
But, okay, we've talked enough about bars for the moment, I think. But you told me about a hayride?
Yeah. When I first got here, one of the big traditions was to have a Halloween hayride.
Oh.
And I don't remember the name of the people, but there was this farm out the east of campus that they did hayrides for different groups. And, if you paid enough, they would open up their farm for you to have hayrides. And then afterwards, we'd have like a bonfire and so forth. And, that always had a big turnout because not only would OSU come to it, but we had people from OU and UCO would come and join us. Because UCO at that time didn't have a gay organization. So they either bounced between us or OU. And OU's community wasn't as strong or well organized as ours was. So, everyone just kind of, we put the word out and, we're coming to it, and so forth. So, yeah.
I've never been on a hayride. What do you do?
You just get up on the back of this flatbed truck on bales of hay and, if you've got a partner, just get cozy under a blanket and just go and enjoy the dark ride. And on, one year they did do a spook ride where, they'd have, different things set up and try to scare you and so forth. But for the most part, it was just kind of a little, get up there with your baby and cuddle and enjoy being warm next to somebody on a cold night.
That's so cute. Yeah. Oh, that does sound like fun.
Yeah.
So that's like a nice winter activity.
Yeah.
You told me you had a spring banquet too.
Yeah, we had our community banquet. Always towards the end of the semester, usually late April, and where we would just get together and celebrate different things like people graduating, awards that people had been given, and so forth. So, and it was also a chance to introduce next year's officers to everyone as well.
Oh, neat.
Yep.
Sounds kind of formal. Ooh.
Yeah, it was a formal thing, and also, you'd always get decked out in a suit and, dresses, that sort of thing. So
how fun.
yeah.
Oh man! And did like the university help cater it, or did you potluck it?
No, we just would find some restaurant that would be willing to cater it, because we could never really find a spot on campus that we were comfortable enough to have the thing.
Oh.
We usually held it at one of the restaurant, or not one of the restaurants, one of the hotels here in town.
Oh.
Usually there was a Best Western that we had it at a couple of times, and as you're coming into town from Oklahoma City, there was a Holiday Inn
Mhm.
that we also used a couple of times. So,
Cool. Oh, we should bring that back. That sounds so fun.
Yeah, it was. It was a really cool event.
Oh man, and that was every year?
Yeah.
Wow.
We started it, I don't know, 1 or 2 years after I got here, and then
Oh.
it went on at least the rest of the time that I was here.
It sounds like you got active in that club just immediately after you joined.
Pretty much the first year, it was just I was a member, and then the second year I joined the gay speakers group,
Oh.
which was where we would go into different classes. Primarily it was the psychology, sociology, and the human sexuality classes.
Mhm.
But we would just go in and share a little bit about our lives, and then open it up to audience questions, where you get everything from like, how did you know you were gay, or I've always wondered, you're both men. How does that work in bed? And different, to things as mundane as, okay, do you know how to cook?
What?
Whatever was on their mind that they wanted to ask, their first open gay, lesbian, or bisexual person.
Oh.
So yeah.
Did you get anything really uncomfortable, or was it?
Not really. I mean, I think most of the people were probably a little too uncomfortable to ask some of those questions, and also, we didn't really ever get anything that we were just, I'm not going to answer that. I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to, I don't know, or something like that. There were 1 or 2 times where, I just flat out tell them, I really don't know. Because, at that point, I hadn't been involved with any of that. So it's like, I can't tell you anything.
Involves any of that?
Well, one person was like, we see on TV about, at the Pride parades, we see all these men wearing leather and things like that. What's that all about? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not part of that culture, or anything like that. So I can't really tell you why, some people are into leather, or some people are into things. It's like, it's probably the same reason why you're attracted to the people that you're attracted to, that sort of thing. So yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. And then after a year of just being a member, Richard, the guy that was in charge of the Speakers Bureau, he graduated, and so I was the only person that he thought could kind of take the reins.
Oh.
And so, he worked with me for a couple of weeks to get me aware of, okay, this is how you get the things organized and so forth. And so I became the de facto leader of the Gay Speakers Bureau.
Oh, you got grandfathered in?
Yeah. So yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and then there were a year or two where I was like the secretary for the main group and so forth. But a lot of it, I just kind of was on the sidebars, helping out where I was needed and so forth. I didn't really get too involved with the reins of leadership and so forth. Like I say, mainly I served as secretary for a year or two, and kind of the around 96, they kind of gave me the name historian.
Ooh.
And yeah, but other than that, that was how I was involved.
What'd you do as historian? That sounds cool.
Basically, it was just part of my role as secretary was just keeping records and just keeping track of everything. I would keep membership records as to like who's paid dues and who went to the parties, how many people voted in the elections and things like that. And so, we kept a notebook full of all of those records and things. And, whenever I stopped being secretary, I just passed it on to the next person and so forth. So,
I wonder what happened to that. I wouldn't know.
That I don't know because, there's been so many transitions and moves that I don't know.
And we've changed the name another 8 times or so.
Oh, yeah.
It's still in the same office, though, so that's nice. But that's so cool. Historian, ooh. But that's kind of a secretary thing, too.
Yeah.
If you're writing it down already, you might as well.
Yep.
Now, you told me a little bit about a denim day.
Yeah. Denim Day, to promote gay rights. I don't know how it came about or who thought of it, but we just started promoting, wear denim on a particular day to promote gay rights. And, it was just kind of one of those random things that it just snowballed. And I remember, all of the ag students, they were, how dare you do that? You can't make people wear denim to promote gay rights. We wear denim because we have to, because we work with animals and things. And you can't make us, promote gay rights because we do this. And so I never will forget it. The very first one, there were a lot of, you could tell all the ag students because they either didn't show up that day or they were wearing, corduroy or slacks that day with their cowboy boots and so forth. So, yeah. But after the first year, you saw more and more people either they weren't paying attention to it or, we did have some that would say, I support you and so forth, my cousin's gay or this person's gay and so forth. So they're like, I know somebody, so yeah, y'all should have the same rights and so forth. So.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but it was like I say, it was just kind of one of those, it just started as a lark or something and it just kind of boomed. And so yeah.
Oh, I bet we could do that again. That would be fun.
Yeah.
When did Denim Day happen?
I was working in Kerr Drummond, so it had to have been after 1992. Mm-hmm. Between 92 and 96 is when I was over in KD. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You were at school here for a hot second.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah. Well, did you get more than one degree? What'd you do?
Yeah. In 93, I graduated with a degree in psychology and social work. I started working on a master's degree. Mm-hmm. And after a semester of that, I realized that wasn't for me. So I dropped out of the master's program and decided, I've always loved to read. So I decided I'd get a literature degree. And so I started with that program, and after the first semester, I was like, okay, there's not much of a demand for people with literature degrees, so I'm like, I can get a minor in education. So, so 96, I graduated with my degree in literature with a minor in secondary education.
Oh.
And I took a year off from school where I just went back to Tulsa and I did a bunch of substituting jobs because that year, when I graduated in May of 96, there were over 200 of us that graduated with English education backgrounds. and there were only about 25 jobs in the state for English teachers. And also, so I did a lot of subbing that year, and everyone that I was subbing for were like, do you have an elementary degree? We would hire you in a heartbeat. And so I was like, no, I don't have that. I've got secondary and so forth. But they're like, but we're classified as an elementary school, so we got to have an elementary degree. So I was like, well, nope. And so, after all of those people telling me that, I'm like, well, I came up here one day and I visited with the graduate program, and we figured out what I would need to do. And so I'm like, okay. So I came back in the fall of '97 and worked on getting my elementary education certification.
Wow.
And I graduated with that in May of '99.
Wow. Okay, so you have several degrees, more or less.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Now, there's all kinds of other stuff I want to ask you, but let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
You told me that you were doing tours one summer?
Yeah.
When was that? Like campus tours?
I don't remember what year it was. It was whatever year President Halligan was hired. And I was working through the Office of Conference Affairs, I think is the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
They were stationed in Scott Hall. And every summer, they would open up the dorms to different conferences and things like that, and they would just hire college students to be CAs, conference assistants.
Oh.
You would get free room and board. And you also, if you worked certain events, you got a small hourly wage.
Ooh.
And so, most of us like doing the conference tour or the campus tours because you got paid a little bit and you also got a free catered lunch.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so, one day I was... we'd always start our conference, I don't know why I keep saying conference. We'd start our campus tours right outside the little theater in the Student Union. And there was a travel agency right there where we'd meet everyone with. And so one day, I'm waiting on everyone to arrive and for the time to actually start when we could start the tour. And so this older man and his wife, walked up, and I was like, okay, so somebody's got their grandparents with them. That's not unusual.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on these tours long enough where, I've seen the entire family shows up. There's 15, 20 of them.
Wow.
And also, I didn't think anything of it. So, we're starting our tour. We're walking the backside of the classroom building towards the library in Whitehurst, and this gentleman just says, "Are the windows on some of these buildings always this dirty?" And I just was like, "Well, sir, usually at this time during the summer, the groundskeepers and all of the workers are really focused more on the big events and making sure that all of the landscape is taken care of and fixing all those things up." So it's like, during the summer, the windows do have a tendency to kind of get a little left behind and get a little dirty. But I was like, usually when the regular semester starts, they're nice and sparkly. And also, I just turned right around and kind of kept on going with my tour and all. And the next day, we started our tours, and lo and behold, there's a crane outside of the classroom building washing windows. And I was like, okay, that's a little odd. It's the first time I've ever seen that happen in the middle of July.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, anyway, whatever. I just keep on going and didn't think anything about it. And then newspapers came out on Thursday. And so Thursday comes, I'm waiting on my last tour of the week, and I grabbed the newspaper because they just delivered them right beforehand. And front cover of the newspaper, everyone welcomes new president, James Halligan. And I'm like, oh my God, it's that man that was asking about the windows and all the other little kind of odd, quirky questions. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm immediately going through my mind, what did I say? Did I say anything that I shouldn't have said? Did I make a bad comment about anything? And I couldn't think of anything, but so I just kind of put it out of my mind, going, okay, I just got to be really careful in the future, And so, this regular semester starts, and I'm still living over there in Kerr. I moved from being a resident assistant to being just a desk clerk at that point. And I'm working the front desk one day, and part of the job of the desk clerks was to answer the phone among other mundane tasks. Mm-hmm. So I pick up the phone, and there's a woman on there saying, I'm the secretary for the president of the university, and I'm looking for a student that lives there in Kerr. And she's like, I need to find out his phone number. And so I was like, okay, I can look it up for you. I was like, do you know the student's last name? And she's like, yes, it's, she's like, I'm not sure how you say it. So she just spelled it. And I'm like, okay. And then it was like, dawned on me, she just said my last name. And I was like, oh, do you mean Michael or Mike Millard? And she's like, yes. And I was like, oh, you're speaking to him. And she's like, oh, well, that's interesting. And she's like, I've been asked by the president to find you. He would like to have lunch with you. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this about? And, so I was like, okay. So we worked out the details as to when I could meet him and, all that stuff. And so, it's a few days away. And, as the day gets closer, I'm getting more and more nervous because I'm thinking, oh, dear God, he's going to talk to me about the things that I said, and, I'm thinking, dear Lord, I can't remember what I said to him. He's going to kick me out of school because I said something bad and all. And no, he just was like, and he's like, I remember meeting you on a campus tour, and you were very upfront and very honest about things. He's like, I just want to meet with you every so often and find out, how am I doing? What can the university do better for our students and things like that. And so I was just like, okay, I can do that and all. And, but yeah, the entire time that we're sitting down and eating and, he's making small talk, I'm just like going, oh God, he's just postponing this. I'm going to get kicked out, and I'm like trying to choke down my food and so forth. But no, I just want to meet with you from time to time to find out how I'm doing, how the university's doing, what do we need to do better and things. So,
wow.
So I was like, okay. So we meet, every so often, and, he'd buy the lunch. So I was like, okay, I can live with that. If you just, you're buying me lunch to find out my views on things, I can do that. So yeah.
What did he feed you?
Basically, it was just kind of whatever I wanted. One time we just sat there in the food court of the student union because it was one of those days where I had a class a little while later, so I didn't want to be rushed or, be completely full and, not pay attention to what was going on in class. We went to, I can't remember the name of the restaurant. There's a restaurant in the hotel there.
The Ranchers
Yes,
Club?
we went there a couple of times. There was a restaurant over near the Home Ec building where the hotel management people ran it.
They still do. It's called
Okay.
Taylor's.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. And also we went there a time or two because I'd never been there. So I was like, yeah, let's go there. And he's okay. So yeah, just wherever.
That's so cool.
Yeah, but it was a fun and a very unique experience because, like I say, that first meeting, I was just like, oh dear Lord. So, but it was just always, how you doing? Classes going okay, things of that nature. And then, how am I doing? Have I done anything that offends any of your friends or, any of the groups that you're part of and so forth. So, yeah.
Wow.
So,
were you open about your involvement with the gay club?
I think he knew I was gay, but I don't think it wasn't one of those things that we ever really talked about, here's my thoughts on the gay community or so forth. But, so yeah.
It sounds like he did sort of know, though.
Yeah.
About you and your community.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was just one of those opportunities that I got to be involved with. So.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What a crazy happenstance.
Yeah, it really was, because honestly, if memory serves me right, I don't think I was supposed to have done tours on that Tuesday, but the person that had some sort of a stomach virus, and they were looking for anybody that could cover them for that day.
Wow.
So yeah.
You never know what coincidence
Yeah.
will come, huh?
So yeah.
You worked on campus pretty much your whole student career, didn't you?
A lot of the time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I started my first year, I lived in Bennett, and I didn't have any jobs that semester because my family just wanted me to kind of focus on getting acclimated and my studies, because I had that first semester, I don't know what I was thinking, I had 18 hours. Compared to, typical first year student, 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, well, I'm not technically a freshman. And also I was like, I can handle it. But yeah, wasn't quite ready for, 300-400 students in an introductory class, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I was glad that I had the time where I could work on my studies and so forth. And then I moved off campus. I moved into this ramshack house that had been turned into, there were two apartments on the top floor and 3 on the bottom floor.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I think if the city had come through, I don't think it would have passed inspection and all. But I never will forget, I lived up there on the second floor. We didn't even have a real front door. We had a sheet of plywood with a lock that you could only lock from the inside of the house.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I never forget, because that was the summer that a tornado hit campus and did some damage to the Sarah Teen Center.
Oh.
And I never forget, because my roommate she wasn't from this area, and so she didn't know what tornadoes looked like. And I never will forget it. We didn't have screens on our windows. She leaned out of the window that was a straight drop down to the road, and she was leaning out the window, and she's like, "Look, Mike, the cloud is spinning." And I'm like, "What?" And I ran over, looked out the window, grabbed her, yanked her back in, and I was like, "We got to get out of here. It's a tornado." And also, we ran downstairs. Luckily, one of the neighbors was there. We managed to get into his apartment, and we rode out the tornado through there. Our side of town, we just had tree branches, and there was I think there were maybe like 5 or 6 unit apartment complexes across the street from us. They had one of the big trash dumpsters. that thing rolled out into the intersection.
Oh no!
Yeah, so I remember, everyone's like, what do we do? And I was like, I know I'm not strong enough to push that thing back. So I was like, just leave it there. I was like, we can still get in and out. So I was like, it's not going to affect us. So, yeah.
Hopefully a big truck will come by and push it back or something.
Yeah, well, and I think, the next day, I think the trash companies came by and took care of everything. So, yeah, but that was the first one. And then I moved, from there, I moved into a house over by the hospital.
Oh.
And it was an awesome house. There were 4 of us that lived there. Rent was $400 a month plus bills. So I think by the time it was all said and done, my bills and rent was like $160, $170.
That's awesome.
At that point, I worked in the college, or the Office of Independence and Correspondence Study, and I was a little guy that would work on putting some of the materials together and so forth. And then I moved from that house into an apartment complex over by the Tri-Delts.
Oh.
And that was an interesting experience because there was a fraternity that was right next to the apartment complex. And one of the guys that lived in that fraternity had classes with me. So we got to know one another. So some of their parties, they let me come over and join some of their parties. And I was like, you do realize I'm a gay guy, right? He's like, I don't care. You're a fun kid to be around.
Oh.
And we worked on a project together in one of our classes. So he's like, you're smart. You helped us out in a bind. So he's like, I don't care. He's like, just do me a favor. He's like, don't hit on any of my straight brothers or my drunk brothers. He's like, they might not like that. He's like, you might get away with a lot, but he's like, we don't want the repercussions.
Oh.
So I was like, you ain't got to worry. I was like, I'm perfectly happy with where I'm at and who I'm with. So yeah, because at that point, that was right before I moved back onto campus to be a resident assistant.
Oh.
And because that was interesting too. One of the hall managers or hall directors came to one of our GLBCA meetings, and he's like, hey, I just want to throw this out to you guys. We're interviewing for new resident assistants. This is what the job entails. This is what you get from it. And he's like, and we're looking to diversify our staff.
Wow.
He's like, so, if you want to be part of it, here's the applications. And so, I'm like, I was like, well, I'm just finishing up my psychology degree. I'm like, that would be kind of a cool internship type thing. So I got one of the applications, filled it out, turned it in, and I'm thinking, okay, they're not going to hire, a 5'3", 5'4", 80 pounds soaking wet, openly queenie gay guy. And I got an interview. They interviewed me. I got the follow-up interview, and I'm like, this is getting serious.
Yeah.
And then next thing I know, I'm getting called into Iba Hall, which was where the Office of Residential Life was. And I'm getting called into the director's office, Dr. Bob Huss. And he interviewed me a little bit, and he just wanted to get to kind of know me and find out some of my interests and all. And he's like, okay, we've got a couple of floors that are open. He's like, this is where I'd like to put you. And so anyway, somehow news got out that I was going to be the first openly gay resident assistant, and they were going to put me over in Bennett. And they were going to put me on one of the athlete floors.
Oh.
Yes. And one of my friends lived over there at that time. She told me that I need to come over there one day, because I needed to see what was being posted on they had what was kind of like a community bulletin board, and I went over there and we went up onto this floor. The entire thing was covered with derogatory things about, they don't want that fag on the floor. If that queer guy comes on here, we're gonna, do this or that to him. And I'm like, okay. And I started getting some harassing phone calls. And so I was like, okay, I called the Stillwater police, let them know about what was going on. One day I came home and there was a screwdriver stuck into my apartment door.
Oh.
And there was a note also there saying that, that was what was going to happen to me if I moved over there. And so I don't know how or who figured out where I was living, but police got involved with that. I don't think they never did find out who did it, but they contacted Residential Life and explained what was going on. And so Dr. Huss called me back in. He's like, do you still want to be a resident assistant? And he's like, we will back you 100% with whatever your decision is. He's like, if you don't want to move over there to Bennett, we'll back you with that. We have some other floors that we work with you on, and so forth. And so it's like, yeah, I want to be a resident assistant, but I just don't think that being in that environment would be the best for me or for the residents, because I don't want to cause conflict. I don't want to, bring unnecessary attention to anybody, that sort of thing. So he's like, okay. So they asked me to come to Kerr Drummond and speak to one of the floors over there. And so we go up to Kerr 2, which was the intensive study floor.
Oh.
I spent 4 hours in the lounge talking to the residents. I talked a little bit about who I was and things of that nature. And then we just started asking questions about one another. I was like, okay, kind of what are the majors that are mainly on the floor? Engineering was a big one. And there were a couple others, finances and things like that. But I just remember a lot of them said engineering. So, I was like, okay, I can live with that and so forth. And so Dr. Huss and the hall director that was assigned to that part of Kerr, they visited with the residents a little bit after I left. And that was where I ended up for 2 years. And I was the RA on Kerr 2. Room 218 was the RA room. And so they told me only one person that was living there asked to be moved to a different floor. Everyone else decided they were going to stay there, and they were cool with me being gay and so forth. And also, yeah, it was a really interesting 2 years being an RA. We only had 1 or 2 instances where kind of negative things happened. One time, I was just hanging out on the floor. I was putting up some stuff in the elevator landing, and the elevator opened up, and some kid just yelled out, "Oh, this is the fag floor. Everyone on here is, just sucking dick and things like that." And the residents all come running out, and they were trying to figure out, because I pointed to which elevator it was, and so they were trying to figure out what floor it stopped on so that they could go up and so forth. But we never did figure it out because it stopped 3 different floors and all before it came back down. So I was like, guys, sorry, that's going to happen. I can't control it. Just ignore it.
What a brave
And
heckler.
then, yeah,
From a moving elevator.
yeah.
God.
And then we had another time where another resident in the building was doing the harassing phone calls
Oh.
again. And so my residents got wind of it because the campus police came and were interviewing me and some other people and all. And so they kind of put two and two together. And so whenever it was my night to do rounds, that's where you have to go on all of the floors that are your part of the building and just walk the floors to make sure there's no problems. There's nobody, at that time, nobody was drinking, or if it was after hours, nobody of the opposite gender was on the floor and so forth. So while that was going on, my residents, a couple of them were taking turns to walk with me because they were like, you're good. You let us do a lot of stuff. We're here for you. They're like, you're just Mike. You're not just that gay guy. You're the guy that, when I couldn't get in my room and I was just in a towel, you ran downstairs and got keys for me. You're the guy that let my girlfriend get them, leave without getting me in trouble, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, so they actually caught that kid that was doing all the harassing to me, and he got kicked out of the dorm. He also had to do, I don't know how many community hours, because we pressed not only harassment and intimidation charges, but the Stillwater police also filed it as a hate crime.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was very, very different back in the 90s when, hate crimes were not a thing in the state of Oklahoma.
Oh.
And so, yeah, but we got that tacked on. And from what I also understand, he was expelled from the university at a slightly later date. And also, yeah.
Oh, it sounds like he sucks.
Yeah, it was one of those things, I tried not to put too much credit to it, but, when he was giving specific things about, like what you're wearing, and they knew that all the RAs lived in the 18 room. So, it wasn't too difficult to deduct, which room I lived in and so forth. And our phone numbers had to be public knowledge. So, it wasn't difficult to get my phone number, but.
That's so scary.
Yeah, but, it was just, like I said, I just kind of took it as nonchalantly as I could, but I was more aware of things. I got one of those gigantic flashlights, like the police, a mag light.
Oh.
Yeah, I got one of those, and whenever I'd go on rounds, I'd carry that with me, just, to be on the safe side. And also we found out that whenever we had a fire drill, that sucker was great to bang on the doors to get the people out of their rooms with. People heard that sucker banging on the door compared to my little...
So it's like a baseball bat with a light bulb in it. That's amazing.
But after that year, I stopped being an RA and became a desk clerk. Because I was starting to get to a later point in my academic career, and I needed a little bit more time and so forth. So.
I bet. The harder the classes get, the
Yeah.
more time you
Oh, yeah.
study for them.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's a wild story.
It's
Okay, I have a couple of kind of random
Okay, no
questions.
problem.
Because I love to talk to you. But anyway, so you had the meetings, you had students from other schools and kind of the community coming in. Did you have kids from the high school coming in?
To my knowledge, we didn't really have any high schooler kids. There might have been, but if there were, they were kind of some of the ones that kind of held back and didn't get quite as involved as, those of us that were students here, or, people from UCO that were trying to figure out how to start their own group.
Oh.
So.
They have a really great program now. I'll tell you all about it later.
Cool.
But you told me about a regional gay student alliance. Is that kind of where that got started?
Yeah, that was how we kind of started it, was that, we just started having more and more people from UCO, OU. And so we just put the word out that, hey, let's just band together and, have a joint voice on things. And so, we opened it up to not only those schools, but we opened it up to TU. We had a couple of schools from Texas even that heard about us and joined in. Because I never will forget, we went down to Dallas a couple of times for, we called them working weekends, where we had, meetings, and then we'd go out to some of their nightclubs and, venture out into their community and so forth. So
How
yeah,
cool.
that was fun. I never will forget, that was my first time going to an actual gay bookstore.
Oh.
Because there was in Dallas, there was, someplace on, I can't remember the name of the street, but that street where all the nightclubs are and so forth, there was an actual can't talk, a bookstore that catered just to the GLB community.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, y'all can go to the nightclubs. I'm staying here.
Yeah, that's full circle right there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my God. How did you keep in touch with everybody? Was there a newsletter?
We did, at that point, the internet was starting to emerge. So we had internet addresses and email addresses, so we could communicate through email.
Mm-hmm.
And, we did that. And then just a lot of phone calls back and forth, saying, okay, we want to plan a weekend. When's good for y'all, and so forth. So yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to do that again. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, there was the other thing. Well, I'll get back to it because I want to ask you that you mentioned you had drag queens come to campus once for drag tips.
Uh-huh.
What? How did that start? How did it go? How did it finish? Tell me everything.
It was the president and the other officers of the GLBCA. They were looking for topics, and so the first of the school year, we would just always write down things that we were interested in, and like what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody just put down drag queens, and so they talked to, I don't remember who in the city, but they talked to a couple of the drag queens and got them brought in, and it was a hilarious evening. And because our meetings would generally start at 7:00, and here's these two bigger than life women just parading around, and they just randomly picked a couple of people from the audience, and they're like, "You're getting made over." And they just brought them up to the front, and okay, for realistic breasts, here's what you do. And they got their supplies out and just showed us how to make that. The secret is bird seed, planting or potting soil, pour all that into a Ziploc bag, zip it up, kind of scrunch it up, drop it into a knee-high pantyhose, and give it a couple of good shakes to get it all dropped down, and twist it, and then tie it off, and so there you go.
One fresh
And I was
titty.
just like, okay, I would never thought of that. And so then, like I said, they did the whole kit and caboodle from toes all the way up to hair.
Oh my God.
And it was just okay. Who would have ever thought that? And I would have never pictured doing that. And but yeah, so and they were telling us that they could, if they were just performing for a club there in Oklahoma City, that they could get their makeup done in 5 minutes. But if they were doing for a pageant, that they were like, you're looking at least an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And also I was like, okay. And also, yeah.
When was that?
That was probably 95.
Wow.
I would think, So yeah, and because I remember it was around Halloween, and so they came back for our big Halloween party.
Oh.
And it wasn't, at that time, the hayrides had kind of gone away, and we were having these humongous parties. There was a trailer park on that side of town that had a clubhouse that we could rent out for, I think it was like $200-$300 for the evening. And as long as we cleaned up, we got part of that money back. And it had a huge basement that we used as our dance floor, and the upstairs there was a kitchen that with a huge bar for drinks and snacks and things, and plenty of seating. And there wasn't a pool, but there was a patio area out back with a big privacy fence.
Wow.
So yeah, we just we just would party there, and like I say, those drag queens came back on that night of the party, and they were a ball. They were a hit, and so yeah.
Did anybody get inspired to do drag themselves?
There were a few that started kind of doing drag, and I will admit I did drag a couple of times. The year that the Madonna sex book came out.
Oh.
I did Madonna that year.
Of course.
Yes, of course. There's a costume shop someplace in town.
Costume balloons and stuff.
Yeah, that's it. One of my friends worked there, and he let me know that they'd just gotten in the Bombardier bustier.
Oh.
And so I was like, save that one for me.
Sign me up.
Yes, that was, and he had the rest of the outfit for it, and so that was what I went that year. And the book came out that same day, so that entire night I'm just going, I'm Madonna. Have you seen my book? It's sexy, and just different things like that, and it was just hilarious. And then there was, I think the year after that. We had another one of our parties, and I never will forget that one because I did a mini skirt and just a bra and a leather jacket.
Saucy.
So I was doing the whole beginning era of Madonna that time, and I never will forget because I don't know why we stopped, but we stopped on the main drag. And we went into the Coney Islander. Yes. And I never will forget because there were a couple of the frat boys were there, and they just kind of looked at me, and they were just kind of looking, and I had the leather coat zipped up because I was like, okay, I'm not quite comfortable showing that much flesh in a public place.
You didn't flash in your titties?
No, I didn't at all. But yeah, they kept on looking at me, and one of my clip-on earrings fell off. And, I didn't realize it. And one of the boys brought it over, and he's like, "Here, I think this is yours." And I just, "Thank you, honey." And he just kind of, his eyes got really wide, and he's like, "You're a guy, aren't you?" And I was like, "Only way you'll ever know is if you go to bed with me." And I just walked out, and he just, the entire time I'm walking away, his eyes are just like that. And also, yeah. And his friend that was still sitting there, I don't think he ever clued into what happened, but yeah. So yeah, and like I said, I don't know why we stopped there. And because we didn't get food. What? I don't know why we stopped there for anything.
Oh, for God's sake.
I just remember my friend Kevin, he was the one that was driving, and we had to stop because he needed to. So yeah.
Maybe they have the best bathrooms in town.
Who knows? I don't remember, but yeah.
Oh my God.
So yeah, but that was, and that, like I say, that was kind of the introduction to drag queens, and they asked to be invited to different events and parties that we had, and so we kind of started getting to be known for, the drag queens are coming this time.
Oh,
So yeah.
wonderful. You never put on a drag show here, did you?
Not while I was an active part of the organization. Now, when I came back in '97, there was, I want to say that last year that I was here, they did have an early version of Dragonfly.
Wow.
Where, they brought in some drag queens and things of that nature to do a performance in the little theater.
Oh, that's so cool. Sorry, I'm writing this
No
down.
problem.
My last semester project was all about Dragonfly, so I
Yeah,
wish
I
I'd
remember,
talked to
yeah.
you a year ago.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that when we first started emailing to try to set this up.
Yes, but there I basically started in 2003, so I'll have to dig a little deeper now.
Yeah.
Yes. But you were busy, by God.
Hey, if I wasn't in class and I wasn't busy doing one of my student teaching experiences, then I kind of did just I either was part of the GLB group or part of the Residence Halls Association. Because when I came back in '97, my focus kind of did shift from the GLB group to RHA.
Oh.
So yeah.
Okay. But let's not get there yet.
Yeah.
Because you told me there were some gay students trying to start the Delta Lambda Phi, the
Yeah.
fraternity.
Yeah, we started trying to start that in, I was an RA at that time, so it had to have been about like '93.
Oh, okay.
And I somehow I was the spokesperson.
Oh!
Yeah, so I was the one that called the national headquarters and spoke to them about getting a chapter, and they sent us all the information, and I was the one that had to go and talk to Greek Life and all this, because nobody else knew what to do or how to do it, and they just said, you got more tact than we do, and I'm like, oh really? Yeah, right. So, but yeah, I ended up, there were several meetings with the Greek Life, and it just, nothing ever came from our meetings and, trying to get a pledge class started and so forth. Because some of the people that were interested in being the first pledge class, they ended up dropping out and moving on and so forth. So
it's a lot of paperwork, I hear.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm sorry it didn't work out. I wish I could have joined it.
It was one of those things that at the time it was a huge thing, and there were a couple of fraternity guys that they knew who I was through classes and things, and they heard through the gossip mill, and they're like, do you know anything about this and all? And they're like, it's not going to work here. There's just too many people are going to fight you on it and so forth and all. But they're like, we think it's cool that you're doing that and all. So, but yeah, like I say, it's just too many things came in our way. So.
Yeah, it sounds like you got lots of other stuff done though.
It was one of those things where it was just the exposure, I think, was helping everyone realize that, there are, more than just, the one or two people that you see sitting out on the GLBCA booth, from time to time and so forth. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, my next question on the list is, what else was the club doing then? But it sounds like, was the club kind of behind trying to get the gay frat started?
They really weren't for it, but they weren't against it.
Oh.
And because at that point, we had a lot of lesbians in the organization at that point in time, and so they're like, well, what about us?
Oh.
If you get a gay frat started, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So we were like, well, start a sorority.
Is there a lesbian sorority chapter?
There is, but I don't think it started at that particular time. But I have heard of one.
Oh, good.
So yeah, but so I was just kind of like, so basically what you're trying to tell us is that the men are going to branch off and do their own thing. And I was like, no, we just, want to kind of have a house or some place where we can do guy stuff and, be, part of something else.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're still going to be part of the GLBCA because, like I am the G in GLBCA, that sort of thing. So, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see why it didn't really happen, but it's cool that you tried.
Yeah.
What a neat thing to go for.
Yeah.
Oh, you were telling me about a newsletter.
Yeah, we had a monthly newsletter that we put out because when I was the secretary, that was part of my responsibility as well.
Wow.
So yeah, we just put out. It was usually 2 to 4 pages long, so pretty short. We just kind of the front page was dedicated to the organization and what was upcoming or what was talked about at the meetings, and then the back page was fun stuff.
Oh.
Yeah. We had this column that was called The Never Ending Story.
Oh.
That every month a different person took it over. So you just had all different types of twists and turns in the story. And because it started out very innocently, about this guy going to the library, and then, in a couple of months it turned into, he saw this strange figure in the library. It didn't quite look human and different things. And so it was just this tabloid trash type thing. And,
how wild.
But, we had a blast with it.
What
And also, yeah.
What was it called?
Gosh, I don't even remember at this point. And I don't remember.
Oh, it sounds
It's been,
cool.
20 years plus since we did it. So yeah.
I can't believe it's been 20 years since the 90s. That's terrible. But you also did a helpline.
Yeah.
When did...
that would have been around 94, 95. I don't remember how it got started, but we started off in what's called the Bennett Chapel.
Yeah.
One of the religious groups that was in charge of it kind of helped us organize it and get us started. And we got set up in the basement of the Bennett Chapel. Our entrance was there was an entrance from the outside of the building down to the basement. And so that was the one that we could go in and out of. And there were a couple of us that had keys to that so that it could be locked at all times. And so we just had like an office space about this big down in the basement with 2 telephones in there. There were campus phone numbers.
Oh.
And I don't remember the number and all, but I do remember we worked it out so that it did have some gay reference to the numbers.
1-800-GAYS.
Something like that, but a lot of what we did was just answer questions, like people that were just new to the community. Where can I go night clubbing? Is there a student group on campus? Things of that nature.
Wow.
We only had like 1 or 2 kind of suicidal phone calls. And so those, we just followed typical helpline protocol as to how to handle those things. There was a second office that we could go into, and it also had a phone in there. And so we just, the second person, because we always had at least 2 people on duty at all times. And so the second person could just kind of sneak around into that phone and call campus police and say, hey, this is what's happening. We need you to put a trace on that line and go and, help out. And, because we've got this person that's, possibly suicidal and so forth. So,
wow.
Yeah. And then after about the first 2 years, we moved from Bennett Chapel over to the first floor of Wilhelm.
Oh,
Yeah. And so, yeah, because I remember that because that was how I first got introduced to Kathleen.
Oh,
Because she was a desk clerk over at Wilhelm.
Kathleen Kennedy?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's why when I came back in 97, I was kind of more focused on helping the RHA, was because she was involved with it. Because we ran against one another for president of RHA, and that was how we really bonded, was because we didn't realize that one of the other two candidates was playing us against each other. And also, yeah. And so once we kind of figured that out, then we were like, okay, whatever happens, we're going to stay tight.
The intrigue. Oh my God.
So, yeah.
Who did win that?
That year, it wasn't the two of us. it was one of the other 2 or 3 candidates that,
Wow.
kind of came up from the behind. And but I think some of the drama that was going on with the two of us kind of hindered it. So
Yeah, that happened. I'm so glad you got to be friends with her, because I interviewed her last semester because she helped with the drag show, and that's the only way that I met you. And
because I never will forget it, because right after, I guess, she'd set up an interview with you or something, and she said, she dropped my name during that interview, and then she called me in a panic. I never will forget it, because, she was like, Mike, I gave this guy your name and contact information about you. You were big with the gay community there at Stillwater. And she's like, I didn't think about the fact that you're a teacher and you might not want people to know that. And also she's like, if he calls you, that's who it is, and just tell him no, and so forth. And because she's like, if you don't want to do it, I don't want to hurt your chances of being a teacher and so forth, because she's like, I didn't think about that.
She's such a kind lady.
I was like, it's not a big deal. It's like, I'm not exactly out, but I'm not in either. It's like everyone knows it. So, yeah.
I know how you feel.
Yeah.
I feel like people don't think it, and then I open my mouth and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
But yes, I feel you. But Kathleen is great. I really like her. I'm so glad that we got in touch because of her.
Yeah.
So you became friends with her, and this was when, your second time?
Yeah.
This was later.
Yeah. It would. I think she and I ran against each other like right around the time that I was graduating.
Oh.
And then when I came back on campus, she was already actively involved with RHA, and she's like, I'm running for president. I want to do this. And she's like, I know you've got a very interesting background and diverse background. She's like, I want you to be, in charge of it. And so that was kind of how I got really involved with RHA. And
in charge of what?
She wanted to do programming, and have like people that were knowledgeable about different topics be able to go into the different floors in the halls and present these things to people. Like one of the things that I went in and did was it was called like stressed out or relaxed to the max or something. And I just went in and talked to the floor about ways that they could de-stress, after midterms or, a bad breakup and different things like that. So
utilizing that psychology degree.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh man.
And then that kind of evolved into being an executive position on the RHA board.
Wow.
Which I held from until I graduated in '99, and I passed it on to 2 of my founding members that were part of the board.
Oh, that's awesome. Let's see, I have all kinds of other questions, but you've answered a bunch of them. And when you came back, the gay club had a different name.
Yeah.
Soda.
Uh-huh.
And you said you remembered them talking a little bit about a drag show. Do you remember?
Yeah, they talked a little bit about it, but there was kind of one group was cool with it, and then another group, that's just perpetuating stereotypes and things of this nature. We can't be involved with that because we're trying to make everyone think that we're normal.
Oh, the same fights we have now about it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just like, it doesn't matter. There is no normal person on the face of this earth. Everyone's got quirks, so just be happy with the quirks and move on. If that's what you want to celebrate it. If you don't want to celebrate it, ignore it and go on.
Nobody's going to make you put on a dress.
Yeah. That's what I tried explaining, but like I say, it was a different group.
Mm-hmm.
All of those of us that were big in the activism stage had kind of graduated and moved on to their own separate things and so forth. So, I'm just like, okay, this is entirely different than when I was part of it before, and I wasn't really comfortable anymore there. So, part of it was because I was older.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my mid-20s, 26, 27 at that point. And so, I didn't have a lot in common with an 18-year-old freshman. So, okay, you guys do your thing, I'll go do my thing. And if our paths cross, cool. If not, so be it.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I'm glad you had the RHA. It sounds like you made a difference there.
Yeah, like I say, being part of that and just being the first openly gay RA, then a desk clerk, visibility was becoming greater and greater. When I moved over to being a desk clerk, there were 3 other RAs that came out.
Wow.
And 2 of them were in my building. One of them, the entire time I was an RA, I knew he was, but he never announced it or anything. It was just kind of one of those, if I want to go and do the gay thing, I'll go to Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, there's gay things here too, but he just thought he had to keep that part of his life separate and so forth. So I was like, okay, that's how you want to do it, that's fine. But I was like, just don't expect me to, cover up who I am when I'm around you. And he respected that, and we were good friends and so forth. So, he got a little bit. Obviously, whenever I transitioned over to a different role, he felt comfortable enough with himself that he came out and he was an RA, and I happened to move up to his floor. just because I was like, well, I don't have any reason to be on 2 anymore. So I was like, and I know you got one of the big rooms open. So I was like, I want that big room for myself.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Some of those rooms are like 4 square feet. They're awful.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so cool. Yeah. It's neat that you saw the difference you made immediately.
Yeah. Well, like I say, it was just kind of, they were there and they were who they were in their own way, and I guess just being exposed to how I was being treated just made them realize that okay, he's not getting treated horribly or badly even in any sense of the way. So they're like, I guess I could do it too. So
that's wonderful. Yeah. And then eventually you made it out of school.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah.
You got your elementary education certificate, right?
Right.
Did you go back and teach elementary school?
I actually, when I was working on my elementary certification, we had a huge education job fair in the Skylight Terrace.
Oh.
And there were schools from all around the region. I remember there was a school as far away from, I want to say it was like New Mexico.
Wow.
And Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. And so I just remember I was waiting on one of my interviews, and I was just wandering around to the different tables and seeing who was there. And there was this one table from Kansas, and they didn't have anybody there. And he's like, just come on over here. He's like, we don't have anybody here to visit with us. So it's like, just get in some practice, And so he ended up talking to somebody else. And this woman, who I later found out was his wife, was interviewing me. And she asked me, all the typical questions, what made you want to be a teacher? What sorts of things do you have to offer our district, and different things of that nature. And so, I got some of their literature that they brought with them, and I just went on about my business. Mm-hmm. And when I was actively doing all of my out-of-state interviews, I traveled up to Garden City, Kansas.
Oh.
And in the middle of my interview, the secretary walks in and interrupts us. And I'm like going, okay, this must be a really important note if she's, cutting us off and all. And so, I'm expecting her to walk over to the principal. She walks over to me and she's like, when you're finished here, I'm supposed to call this number back and let them know that you're on the way down to interview with them. And so I'm like, okay, that's really weird. Nobody knows I'm here and all. And so, I'm like really freaking out about how this school found out that I was interviewing in Garden City.
You've been traced.
Yeah. And so anyway, so I get ready to leave, and the secretary calls and tells the guy that, it's probably going to be about an hour, since it was like 60 some odd miles from Garden City to Liberal. Mm-hmm. And so I get down there, I pull up in the school, and there's only one car there. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, this is really freaky. And also I, find my way into the building, and it's the school secretary. And she's like, are you so-and-so? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, the principal will be here in a couple of minutes. He wants you to know to please wait. And also I was like, okay. So she's like, just have a seat. And she offered me, a beverage and things like that. And so a couple of minutes later, I hear the door open to the school, and this guy walks in. First thing I notice, he's got on flip-flop shoes. And then I start kind of looking up. He's in a pair of swim trunks and a wife beater. And I'm like, okay. And, I kind of started looking at his face, and I go, I know you from someplace. And he's like, yes, you do. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, and, forgive my attire. And this was on a Friday afternoon. He's like, we're getting ready to head out for our vacation to the lake. And also, he's like, I usually wouldn't be dressed this way, but he's like, we got the boat hooked up and everything. So he's like, we're on the way to vacation.
So it's not Jimmy Buffett's high school.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. So he's like, I met you at Oklahoma State. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh yeah. I was like, now, it's coming to me. He's like, my wife interviewed you, and she was impressed with you. She wanted to hire you on the spot. He's like, so I don't have any questions for you. If Dottie trusts you, I trust you. I know you're going to be good for us. So he's like, I only have 3 questions for you. 1, can you give me an answer on Monday? He's like, I'll call you Monday to find out your answer. 2, how would your family feel about you moving 7.5, 8 hours away from them? And 3, how would you feel about going back to college for me? And I was like, okay. I was like, what would I have to go back for college for? He's like, we need you to get an English as a second language endorsement.
Oh.
And I was like, okay. I was like, he's like, it's 6 classes. We offer them here at night. So he's like, you don't have to go anywhere. We do it all within the district for you. So I was like, okay, I can, I was like, I could do that. And also, anyway, I make my way back home. It's like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night when I finally get back home and all. And so I never will forget Monday morning, June the 22nd. He calls at 6 a.m.
Oh my God.
And he's like, this is, I can't remember his first name, Mr. Beer. And he's like, I'm just calling to find out your answers. And I'm like, I'm not awake. I was like, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. And also, finally I get coherent enough. I answer him that, yes, I'm willing to move up there. I'm willing to, take the extra classes, and my family, they're cool with it too. And so he's like, okay, great. He's like, school board meeting is tonight. He's like, I'll call you tomorrow and let you know what their answer is. And also, anyway, Tuesday, 6:30 comes around. He calls me up and he's like, you're the newest teacher at South Middle School.
Wow.
And so he's like, you have to be here by this time or by this date. And so I was like, okay. He's like, but you might want to come up early because, housing is kind of hard to find and so forth. So anyway, we took a couple of trips up there to find a place to live. And, we found some place that was close by the school and a good location. And also I was there from July of 99 until I decided I didn't like that district anymore, which was May of 2012. I moved from there to Emporia, Kansas for a year, which is where I got both of my master's degrees. But I never set foot on campus because I got both of the master's degrees while I was working at South, and I did the whole thing online. So I was great about that. And I was there for a year. And then my mom had a major heart attack, and so that's what moved me back here to Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And I've been in Anadarko ever since. And my interviews with them were on Skype, which was a newfangled thing when I was being interviewed. And they interviewed me 2 times. And I found out that the only reason why they interviewed me the second time was because the principal wanted to see if I had grown any. Because he's like, you looked awfully small on that computer screen. And he was like, I was just worried that the kids were going to eat you up. And but he's like, I talked to your references, and they're like, you're a pit bull. And also, and then the first week of classes, I found out later on, a couple of times, he came in and he stood outside of my classroom door and was listening to me teach, because I had volunteered to take the remedial classes, which were the kids, that are discipline problems. They're the kids that don't have the greatest backgrounds in the world in terms of academics. So he's like, after the first time I heard you get rough with them, he's like, I knew you were going to be fine. And also, I've been there ever since.
You are a pit bull. My God. That's so cool. But let's back up a little bit, because you said we moved up there.
Me and the dogs.
Oh.
I haven't had a partner or anybody like that since James passed away in the early 90s. So
man.
So
I'm glad you got your dogs. That makes a big difference.
Oh yeah, yes. And the one that I had when I moved down here, she was a 112-pound Rottweiler Chow mix.
Oh, I love Rottweilers.
Yes, she was a huge thing, and but
they're just sides of beef with smiley faces.
Yep, that was her.
Oh, yep. I just love her.
Can jump on anything though. That was the funniest thing. She never learned how to jump.
Oh, bless her heart.
So it was the funniest thing. But
So you're teaching? Are you still middle school?
Yeah. Everything that I've ever taught has been at the middle school. It's just the right age level for me.
Oh.
I just like that level. Right now I'm teaching 6th grade, and the kids are still. They're still to the point where they're lovable. Mm-hmm. If they like you, they will let you know. I've got 3 kids this year that every day if I don't give them a hug or they don't give me a hug, they are upset.
Oh.
And then, the eighth graders that I taught, they got my sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So, they loved my little sarcastic humor side. And so,
That's so cool.
Yeah. So.
Sixth grade is about the age that, like, that's the Goonies age, right?
Yeah.
So that's like, it's fun. They're old enough to have an adventure and tell you about it.
Yep.
They're not grouchy teens.
Oh,
about
yeah,
it
yeah.
anymore.
We call, well, in about a couple of weeks, they're going to turn into hormone bombs.
Oh.
Where they start realizing the opposite sex. They start realizing that, if I play during gym, I'm going to get smelly. And so they're starting to figure out all of those things that, they're going to have to pay attention to a little bit more. So, but they're still, like I say, for the most part, 99% of the time, they're still lovable, they're likable, they still, at that age where they believe just about everything that you tell them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sweet children.
So, yeah.
That's fantastic. You're just going to keep teaching.
Oh, yeah. They keep on asking me, are you going to retire? It's like, nope, not until, I'm told I have to, or until I'm dead.
Well,
So,
I don't want you to, and I've never even had your class.
yeah.
You sound like a great teacher.
Well, we're building up the program that I'm doing, because for the first 18 years that I taught, I was a math teacher.
Oh.
Yeah. And but now I kind of started getting burned out on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Go on. Sorry.
I asked the principal if I could move to a different area, subject or something, and she's like, "Well, the board wants us to start teaching STEM classes.
Oh.
Science, technology, engineering, and math. Where you're building things and exploring concepts rather than actually having them learn how to to find the slope of something."
Uh-huh.
So she's like, "What do you think about that?" And so I was like, "Well, that's kind of cool." And I was like, and that still ties in, with some of the math background and some of the other areas that I'm certified in. So I was like, okay. So, this is my second year of teaching that, and we're still learning the ropes and figuring out, okay, a project that I think should take this long. No, it took 3 times as long, or, what I thought was going to take us 2 weeks, we got done in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, I'm just constantly making my notes and, updating all of my books that I've put together for projects and things. So
that's so cool. Are you still involved with kind of a gay social culture around there?
No, really, in Anadarko, there's not anything. There's only roughly 8,000 of us on a good day in town. So, there's not much for anybody down there if you're not tied down to something. So a lot of the people will come up here to the city, mm-hmm. or, move elsewhere. And also, but, the counselors at the middle school, they know that I am gay. Mm-hmm. So, whenever they have a student that's questioning, or, they're just not certain about, and they'll ask me questions. And, if they know that I've had that student, they'll ask me, well, when they were one of your kids, did you ever kind of get the idea or impression and things like that? Because, they're like, we know there's this thing called gaydar. And so they're like, we don't know what it really is, or, if it's just something that, you can, we don't know if it's something like that grinder thing. And I was like, oh, good Lord. So yeah, I was like, y'all just need me to sit down with y'all for an afternoon and explain the ropes to you.
And did you?
So no, but what I did was, for one of my projects for a master's degree, mm-hmm. I wrote a training manual for schools on how to handle, GLB issues.
Wow.
So, but, yeah.
Will you send it to me? Do you
Yeah, I can do that.
I would love that.
Yeah, it's a little out of date now, but, back when I was working on it, it was the most up-to-date thing that I had ever come across.
That's so cool. When did you write that?
It would have been in the early 2000s, like 2004, maybe.
Wow.
Because I had to take a class on.
It wasn't technical writing, was it?
No, it was like culture of minorities or multicultural studies or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just put in my 2 cents worth here and there, and the instructor was like, you need to do something more with your knowledge. And so she's like, instead of doing this, I want you to do this. Because she's like, I know I teach some of the education classes, and I could really use some help with this area on, training my future teachers. So that's what we did, and also.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That wasn't here at OSU, was it?
No, that was at Emporia State.
That's where it was.
Yeah.
I knew it was Kansas, and I couldn't remember where.
Yeah. No, that was,
Oh, I always just think Wichita. That's the only city in Kansas.
Yeah,
for
well,
some reason.
Emporia is about an hour to the north of Wichita.
Mm-hmm.
And then Liberal, Kansas. If you look at the state of Kansas on a map, if you put your thumb on the lower right or the lower left corner,
Mm-hmm.
up there by the panhandle of Oklahoma and Colorado, you cover up Liberal. So
That's where I thought you were driving from today.
yeah, no.
Oh,
No.
good. That's 4 hours from here for the
Yeah.
camera. My God.
Yeah.
You were like, yeah, I'll be there at 10 a.m. And I was like, oh, no, he's getting up so early.
Yeah, no.
But it's not.
Yeah,
what?
no, it's about a little bit around 2 hours.
Okay.
With the pit stop. So
Yeah, that's still pretty far, but it's not 4.5,
no, yeah.
which is nice. But gay culture has changed some in the last several years. What have you observed? What do you think now?
Well, just from what little bit I get to see on TV and Facebook, that sort of thing. Yeah, it has changed. A lot of the groups that I see on Facebook, they're very open about, other groups, but if they find out your age, then there's a lot of ageism.
Oh.
Like the younger gays on one of the groups I'm part of, Facebook, if they find out that you're over a certain age, they will heckle you until you drop out of the group. And so, yeah, I'm like, we're not here for that. It's a group, it's called Gay Geeks, which is for, gay, lesbian, bisexual people that have a love of comic books, scary movies, that sort of thing, geeky type things, Legos, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, they found out that one member was in his 50s and they just heckled him out. And I'm like, okay, I don't want y'all to find out that I'm 48. I'll be the next one you drive off and all. But yeah, I was like, what's that all about?
How rude.
But a lot of it is, like I say, I'm finding that they're more accepting of everyone's differences. Because one group that I'm part of, they were talking about, like what type of person you're attracted to, and just reading all of the different comments, there was not one of them that really said, I only go for, the Ryan Reynolds look or something like that. You saw everything from, I want a guy with the dad body. I want, the first thing that I look for is facial hair or different things like that. And I'm like, okay, back in the 90s, we would never have seen that. You would have had, you were this type of queen or something, and that's what you stayed with.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize.
But yeah, it was, we back then, yeah, you could just by the first time you saw somebody's boyfriend, you could tell, okay, they're only into blondes, or they're only into Asian guys, or they only are, they're size queens, that sort of thing. So yeah, but now it's much more broad from what I've noticed. So I'm like, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't mind it either. That's awesome. Okay, so one of the last questions I always ask everybody is if you have advice for the college students who might watch this interview or read the transcript, who are maybe 17 and 18 and kind of coming out of small towns in Oklahoma like you did, what would you say to them?
Ooh. Don't lose sight of who you are, but be ready and willing to open yourself up to other experiences and other cultures, groups, that sort of thing. Because you never know who or what could inspire you and motivate you to go on and do something else, bigger and better than what you'd ever thought that you were going to be capable of. Because, when I first got here, I thought I was just going to become a psychologist, and I never imagined that I would move on to become a teacher, because that was the farthest thing from my thought patterns. But yeah, just be, like I say, don't forget who you are and where you come from, but be willing to open up to other experiences and allow them to help form your future. So
that's great advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for talking with me.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me.